Lyra had never imagined a life so constrained. Born on the sprawling city planet of Vera, where tradition weighed heavier than steel, she was educated, talented, and fiercely independent. Yet the moment she turned 20, the elders decreed her marriage to a human. Humans were rare among the Virans, creatures with delicate frames, shimmering eyes, and minds attuned to psychic currents. Lyra's people viewed humans as unpredictable, emotional, and impulsive, a threat to the carefully balanced order of their society. She had spent weeks hearing the warnings, whispered in corridors lined with luminescent panels. "He is dangerous," the council said. "He will not understand your ways." Every sentence sank like lead into her mind. She imagined a life of cold duty, pretending to care, forced to bow to a creature she did not respect. When she first saw him, standing in the court's grand chamber with the sunlight glinting off his chestnut hair, she felt nothing but apprehension. His name was Chiron, a human ambassador sent from the Sol system, and he appeared impossibly ordinary. His eyes, however, held a spark she could not name, one that made her stomach twist with a mixture of fear and irritation. The ceremony was simple by Viran standards. No elaborate psychic exchanges, no rituals to bind the soul, only words spoken and hands joined. Lyra's mind raced through every possible way to resist, yet the council's law was absolute. She would be his, officially and irrevocably. At first, the days were unbearable. Kieran's laughter grated on her nerves. His curiosity about Viran culture seemed naive, and his insistence on engaging in mundane conversations felt like a challenge to every fiber of her disciplined mind. He asked questions she did not want to answer. He touched objects she considered sacred with careless enthusiasm. He smiled at her when she wished he would vanish. Yet, in the midst of her irritation, something unexpected began to happen. Kieran noticed, not the surface details, the polite bows or the formal greetings, but the things beneath. He saw the tension in her shoulders when she walked through the palace gardens, the way her fingers traced invisible patterns in the air as she thought, the faint quiver in her voice when she tried to assert control. One evening, she returned to their shared quarters to find him waiting with a simple meal. "I thought you might be hungry," he said, his tone gentle and unassuming. There was no pretense, no political agenda, just a human gesture of care. Lyra stiffened. She was used to formality, to careful distance. Yet the sincerity in his voice made her heart stumble. "I can manage myself," she replied, attempting to mask the warmth that threatened her pride. "I know," he said with a shrug, "but I also know what it feels like to be tired and lonely. You don't have to manage everything alone." The words were harmless, yet they struck deeper than she expected. No one had ever acknowledged her feelings without expectation, without demand, without the need to control. Humans were supposed to be impulsive, chaotic, even dangerous, yet here was one who understood. Simply by observing and caring, days turned into weeks, and small gestures accumulated like quiet stars in the night sky. Kieran left her favorite teas in the alcove where she studied, repaired objects she thought only she could handle, and listened, truly listened, when she spoke of her hopes and fears. Lyra began to notice the subtle differences between humans and Virans. While her people prized psychic skill and perfection, humans valued attention and choice. They saw her as a whole being, not a duty or a symbol. The turning point came during a diplomatic gathering. A neighboring species, the Trelk, attempted a subtle insult, questioning the union between a Viran and a human. Lyra's initial instinct was to retreat into icy composure, to ignore the slight and maintain the dignity her upbringing demanded. But Chiron stepped forward, not with weapons or threats, but with words that revealed an understanding of her worth. "Lyra is not defined by tradition alone," he said. "She is capable, intelligent, and kind. She deserves respect, not empty judgment." The Trelk recoiled, momentarily silenced, while Lyra's chest swelled with an unfamiliar warmth. For the first time, she felt truly seen. Not as a pawn in a political game, not as a fragile creature to be tamed, but as someone valued for her unique self. From that night onward, her perception of Kiran shifted. The fear she had carried like armor softened into trust. The dread of her arranged marriage began to dissolve, replaced by a cautious hope. She discovered that he could match her intellect in debate, laugh without diminishing her dignity, and remain steadfast without rigidity. Humans, she realized, had a resilience of spirit, a capacity to love openly without being bound by rigid rules or psychic expectation. One rainy afternoon, as they walked along the palace terraces, Lyra found herself speaking without restraint. She spoke of her dreams of exploring the outer systems, of mastering ancient Viran arts, of creating something that would endure beyond her lifetime. Kiran listened quietly, holding her hand without need or ceremony, letting her words fill the space between them. "You are remarkable," he said finally. "I don't want to change you, Lyra. I just want to be part of your journey." The simplicity of his words struck her more profoundly than any psychic ritual ever could. She realized that respect, care, and patience were forms of power far stronger than control or tradition. She had feared the human because she expected chaos, but instead, he had offered stability in the most human way possible, through empathy and understanding. Months passed, and their bond deepened. Lyra began to seek his company willingly, cherishing the quiet evenings when they read together, or the moments when they discussed politics and philosophy late into the night. She noticed how humans could adapt, how they faced danger without surrendering to fear, how their emotions, rather than weakening them, often guided them toward courage. One day, during a mission to inspect a newly terraformed colony, disaster struck. A sudden quake fractured the terrain, sending debris and rocks tumbling. Lyra froze, her mind racing for solutions, but instinct alone would not save her. Kiran's hand found hers, steady and unwavering, pulling her toward safety. They moved as a single unit, his presence anchoring her, his actions decisive yet calm. When the tremor ended, Lyra realized she had not been frightened of him at all. She had relied on him, trusted him completely, and in doing so, discovered a strength within herself she had not known existed. Kiran looked at her, worry and relief mingling in his expression, and she felt a pulse of gratitude so deep it surprised her. "You saved me," she said, her voice soft. "No," he replied, shaking his head with a small smile. "We saved each other." In that moment, Lyra understood the essence of human connection. It was not about dominance or expectation, but partnership. Humans, she saw, could teach lessons that no psychic skill or societal decree ever could. Patience, loyalty, compassion, and courage rooted in choice rather than obligation. She had feared the human, feared the unknown, but in embracing him, she discovered a world far richer than any tradition had promised. Years later, their union became a symbol among the Varans, not of rebellion, but of harmony. Others began to see that humans were not chaotic intruders, but allies and companions, capable of profound understanding. Lyra herself became an ambassador, advocating for collaboration and empathy, carrying forward the lessons Kiran had shown her. And though she had once dreaded him, she now could not imagine a life without his presence. He had treated her as no one ever had, with respect, with patience, and with unwavering care. The marriage she had once feared had become the foundation of her strength, her joy, and her vision for a future where the rigid boundaries of tradition yielded to the extraordinary possibilities of human connection. Lyra often reflected on the irony of it all. She had been trained to value perfection and psychic mastery above all else. Yet it was the simplicity of a human gesture, a meal left on a table, A steady hand in a moment of danger, a quiet acknowledgement of her worth that transformed her world. In Kieran, she found not just a partner, but a revelation. That humanity, in its imperfection, carried a beauty and power the universe could scarcely comprehend. As the stars of Vera twinkled above, she stood beside him on the palace balcony, hand in hand, and for the first time she felt wholly free. The human she had once dreaded had taught her to live, to trust, and to embrace a future she had never dared to imagine. In treating her like no one ever had, he had awakened something eternal within her: hope, love, and the indomitable courage to believe that together they could face anything the universe might hold. And so, Lyra learned that fear could give way to wonder, dread to devotion, and that sometimes the greatest strength lay not in mastery or control, but in the simple, steadfast choice to see another as truly worthy.